want to touch me? Come on.
Bayonetta is a hack-and-slash game released in 2009 by Platinum Games for the Xbox 360
Pro gamers
and the PS3.
$599 US.
It had critical acclaim at the time and is still iconic today, with a sequel already out and a third game in the works. So why review this decade-old game now? Well, Lord knows I have the time, and I'm a bit late to the party, I have to confess, as I recently played it for the first time 12 years after it was released. I remember the adverts for Bayonetta back in 2008, because our arse was pretty much everywhere you looked. The game appealed to me, but I didn't own a console, so I just wrote it off like I had with other console-only games. Sorry, Nathan. As a PC boy, you didn't get much say in the matter. You still don't, honestly. But despite this, it's hard to forget the reveal trailer from the 2008 Tokyo Game Show. Now, I'd seen this all before though with Lara Croft. Tomb Raider 2 was the first game I'd ever played as a kid. It broke me into the world of gaming, and I still love it to this day. But I saw the adverts after I played the game, and wow, there's some discrepancies between gameplay and marketing. Now, to be fair, everything ever does this. The promise of sex sells, and there's no denying. Oof. But to me, Tomb Raider was always about being in Lara's shoes. It was the Indiana Jones fantasy, only with a woman as the lead role. You could put Lara in a wetsuit for promotional pictures and whatever, but it didn't matter. It was a game where you explored tombs and solved puzzles, fighting mythical beasts and occasionally mafia hitmen.
So indulge me about the dagger. I'd be indebted with your life.
What the fuck do you know what goes on in my head?
Lara had a bit of a sadistic sense of humour, but at no point did she playfully bend over to pick up the dagger of Xian. The advertisement didn't fit the character. And Tomb Raider is not alone in sexually charged marketing. And I don't really care. I'm as anti-prude as they come. Sun's out, guns out, baby. I don't have a problem with it at all. The extreme ethical cases aside, it is just marketing. And is it just a bit of fun? Yeah, maybe, yeah. Is it terribly accurate? No. Then enter new games developer, Japan. I'd mostly been exposed to Western games throughout my life. I'd never gone in for any Final Fantasies or anything like that, until FF14 melted my imperialistic heart. But now we're here in Japan and the rules are totally fucking different. This isn't some sexy cinematic that is completely out of character. This is the character and the gameplay and the story. I hadn't followed Bayonetta at all past the original trailer that I'd seen. I didn't have a console, so why taunt myself? I'd seen very little gameplay, and what gameplay I had seen was from years old memories. So when I went in fresh and not knowing what to expect. And from start to finish, I was blown away by how outrageous the game is. Outrageous combat, story, locales, characters, cutscenes, just about everything in this game is nuts. And I love it. The moment you start the game, you're treated to story exposition. Only what is being narrated is still going on around you. They don't do tutorials here. You're just on a clock face, falling through the sky, fighting things. This clean intro into the world of Bayonetta goes unsullied by tutorials and pop-ups, something I appreciate immensely. I may as well just start talking about the combat right here. This would be a good transition. After this intro, the gameplay opens up, and yes, it does give you the basics of movement and such, but this is now clearly the starting area of the level, made to familiarise yourself with the controls while kicking off the story immediately. It starts to give you combos and move lists. You have punch, kick, dodge and jump, and everything expands from there. You can chain these into simple or complex strings of moves to pull off amazing feats that generally end in Bayonetta using witchcraft to shape her hair into giant fists or heels, aka wicked weaves. The ability to maintain combos through dodging and to extend each punch or kick for even more damage as Bayonetta unloads her pistols into an enemy is absolutely fantastic. And pulling off the timing of extending just enough to do extra damage but not enough so you miss a chance to unleash your wicked weave is one of my favourite parts of the game. I'm not very good at combos overall. I gave Injustice a try, and while it's a totally different game and fun to play, just wow, I cannot handle most of that. The muscle memory and the timing is not there. And to be honest, memorizing lists of button combinations does not sound like a fun time to me. Complexity wise, I'd say Bayonetta's simple combos are easier to get into than Batman Arkham City, but range to the point where the Dark Knight would fucking cry trying to pull off the timing for some of them, I tell you. And that's the real beauty of Bayonetta. The gameplay is so simple to get into and so satisfying to master, even if it's just mastery over one move or one type of enemy. I kept getting my ass handed to me by these two dudes, Grace and Glory. They're sliding around their fire and lightning skates like Steve Carell. I used my 5 deaths up right there, just on those two. Now, difficulty is always going to be subjective, but I found normal mode a challenge. The real thing is, I never found myself so frustrated I wanted to stop. Bayonetta feels so smooth and slick gameplay-wise that even when the timing is at its tightest, you know you're screwed up if you take damage or go down. It's on you to get better. There's no RNG bullshit. Well, very little, at least. And let me tell you, smacking Grace and Glory down for the first time after working out the moves and the timing, and there was a fight of mobility and openings, nailing down combos that stun-locked them instead of me, making my punch extensions do the work for me, that felt damn satisfying. And I barely got hit, but that one time. Every other time afterwards, nightmare. And the enemy variety is immense, not just in numbers or variations, but in pure creativity. You fight against hordes of angels, but it's clear that they're not what they're hyped up to be. As you fight them, you begin to knock off parts of their marble and gold plating. I just want to point out how great this is, as for one, it serves as a clear visual indicator of how much damage you've caused to an enemy as bits of marble fall off of them. And secondly, it serves as a form of exposition, as you literally break away the aureate skin to reveal the truth of what they are. Gross alien tissue and writhing eyes inhabits these angelic vessels. It reinforces that something isn't on the level with these guys. The Affinity, the foot soldiers, are just the tip of the iceberg. You've got Wheels of Death, big hulking brutes, sexy stonework, and paladin mains. And these are the more standard fare. The game just keeps you guessing with what it will throw at you next. It's safe to say that each enemy has variations and weapons that change how you deal with them. For example, not all Affinity carry the same weapon. Some use ranged and some can fly into the air, and they stay there shooting at you. There are no indicators that you're going to be attacked either. Like the earlier mentioned Arkham games, you have to pay attention to what your enemies are doing and learn the timing of their swings, the tells that they're winding up. Almost all of the enemies are well designed mechanically. There are a few attacks with poor telegraphing where you just look at the screen and think, oh, for fuck off. But for the most part, the enemies are a joy to fight. Successfully dodging at the last moment will activate Witch Time, a slow-mo mode where Bayonetta can unleash hell while the world around her grinds to a halt. This is particularly useful in boss fights for doing as much damage as possible when that window opens. Speaking of, the bosses are all absolutely fantastic, and to talk about them too much would spoil things, and a couple of them really take you in interesting directions, best experienced as a surprise. Special shout out to the penultimate boss's secret weapon, because I love that one. And I'd say some bosses are clearly harder than others, but not one of them feels dull to play against. And there's a noticeable theme in the levels leading up to the boss, like something is approaching. A literal storm on the horizon, and it takes various forms. Each boss fight is accompanied by climax attacks, Wicked Weaves custom tailored for each boss. When you beat them down to a threshold, you'll be able to speed dial one of the infernal demons, again manifesting through Bayonetta's hair, and incidentally her clothes, because of course. They'll come in, and in a button mash event, either take out a big chunk of the boss, or finish the job. And it's always fun, it's always spectacular and excessive. And while fighting regular enemies, Wicked Weaves are worked into your combos, that doesn't mean there aren't other special ways to deal damage. Generate enough magic through combat, and you can activate your torture attack on a chosen foe. Each enemy has a different torture mechanic, some more than one, and they're usually fucking brutal. After a torture attack, if an angel was carrying a special weapon, they'll drop one, which you can pick up and use until its durability busts. Quick callback here to say I found picking up the angelic weapon, dropped by Grace and Glory, is the fastest way to fucking die. The better your mashing ability during a torture or climax attack, the better your combo score. The higher your combo score, the more halos enemies drop when defeated. But what are halos? Well, halos are currency. You spend these at the gates of hell, a trans-dimensional bar run by a demonic entity named Rodin. He leases the place, and he'll swap those halos for items, permanent stat boosts, accessories, and techniques. The last two are probably the most important. Techniques are new combo moves that range from delivering a meteoric kick from above to breakdancing. Accessories are things you can equip that grant you new abilities or change the way you play. One accessory makes it so you can parry and counter attacks rather than dodge. Another summons butterflies to tank hits for you. That's nice, that's nice. You'll earn enough halos to easily unlock all of the techniques on your first playthrough, but the accessories are expensive enough that you may be able to purchase just one or two if you play as poorly as I did. I get the impression they're meant to add fresh gameplay to second playthroughs and also make it easier to handle harder difficulties, but I wouldn't know as I spent all of my halos on outfits the moment I unlocked them after beating the game. Rodin is also your weapons guy, because there are different weapons in this game as well, all with their own sets of combos, combo extenders, and wicked weaves. Some are swift and deadly, while others heavy and brutal. Weapons like the fire claws and the shotguns can be attached to your hands or feet, while the whip and sword are handjobs only. Weapons aren't purchased with halos but unlocked by collecting angelic LPs. Only vinyl is accepted downstairs, and Rodin will reward completed discs with a weapon. On top of all that, there's a taunt button.
Come on!
And it's not just for kicks. Taunting fills your magic gauge and enrages your enemies, causing them to deal more damage and move faster. Combos against enraged enemies generate bigger combo scores, and they drop more halos too.
You want to touch me? Too late!
Combat is basically the entirety of gameplay, and it's very appropriate that it excels in every capacity. Not once does it feel sluggish or unresponsive. Very rarely are you locked into combos. If you're halfway into an animation and you see an attack coming, the game will more often than not let you dodge out of it, and even continue the combo if done properly with dodge offset. And just when you get comfortable, something comes along to shake things up. For a game made in 2009, the combat hasn't aged a day. There are a few platformer and puzzle elements scattered through the level, along with secrets to find through exploration. It's worth exploring as well, not just for the weapon unlocks, but for health and magic boosts. But the lion's share comes from the fighting, and it's hard for me to compare it to other games of the genre. I have limited experience, I'll admit. Google tells me Path of Exile is a hack and slash game, which shows me at least someone knows less about the genre than I do. PoE is kind of fun though, just check it out. I don't want to make broad, sweeping comparisons to other games on the overall quality of the combat, as they do their own thing, so I'll just say it's really fucking good. It's so good that while playing, I didn't just want to beat the game, I wanted to get better. Even if it will never happen. It's so engaging, beautiful, comical, colourful, sexy, and brutal. It has the hallmark of a game that is just fun to play, without just trying to reach the end. I hear people say games are too long now, or at least publishers say games are too long now, and they're mostly wrong. It's not the game's length, but the pacing that matters. More and more games feel like you want to get through it rather than play the game. But Bayonetta is that excellent a game. You would want to play again and again. The moment I finished my normal difficulty playthrough, I loaded up the hard mode. I fucking sat there grinning. Watched the same cutscene I saw the first time around, only this time I'm waiting for it, and bam, Bayonetta bursts out in a fucking cheerleading outfit, and I'm grinning. Oh, look at me, I'm OP now, I have endgame weapons and moves, my hair is amazing. It's basically normal, but they hit harder, right? No, fucking wrong. First bit of the prologue, and guess who shows up and ends me? That's right, Grace and fucking Glory turn up like Margot Robbie and beat the shit out of me. My health pool goes from 100% to 0, and I'm still grinning. The higher difficulties don't just make the enemies more dangerous, they change which enemies spawn, and often in areas where they're even harder to deal with. You'll also know how well you did, or in my case, how terrible you are, as at the end of each chapter you'll get an award, from pure platinum, the very best, all the way down to stone.
Oh, what a day!
I saw a lot of stone awards. In fact, best of all, I didn't record any footage of my normal playthrough until the game was nearly over. I made a new save file to record the intro and stuff, but almost all the gameplay footage you're seeing is me suffering in hard mode. Here's my award sheet for comparison. I'm not gonna lie, I activated my tryhard mode for hard mode, and it still kicked my ass. I'm glad I didn't have that footage of normal though, not only to embarrass myself, but because it made me think. How well can I really review a game without reviewing its harder difficulty? Maybe all of the good things about the gameplay I just said go out the window after that. And no, they don't. Hard mode is a great challenge. Infinite Climax sounds like torture, but I can't wait to try. Fuck Alfheims is the only addition I have. They can end up spoiling the flow of play. But besides that, hard mode just challenges you to think about your play style and weapon usage. Don't underestimate the shotguns, is my advice. If all you care about is gameplay and you haven't already switched off because of my annoying voice, then this is your chance to get off the ride. I'm done talking about gameplay. I might mention it like you would an old acquaintance, but for the most part we're done here. I turn now to the story and characters. For such a huge roster of enemies, Bayonetta has only a handful of characters. Enzo and Rodin have lengthy parts in the opening sequence, but afterwards they're basically unheard from until the end of the game. Enzo is a sleazy Brooklyn underworld type. Not literally underworld, I mean shady business. He's also an undertaker, with about as much respect for the dead as Herbert West. Rodin is literal underworld, a tough motherfucker who serves as his own agent but deals with Bayonetta in her affairs. No nonsense cool guy. But the real characters are Luca, an investigative journalist, I've wrote it down. The real characters are Luca, an investigative journalist tracking Bayonetta, part charmer, part man of action. Cereza, a little girl lost in the city. And John, a mysterious enemy witch. And of course, Bayonetta. There are a few other speaking roles, but I'd rather not spoil things too much.
Ere long, my dear child, I'll always see to it no harm comes to you.
The small number of characters is a strength. Everyone is memorable, and you can't really talk too much about them, all without spoiling the story.
But people keep fucking around like this, the Book of Revelations is gonna look like Mother Goose.
So I will keep this as spoiler-free as possible, and given the small cast, this means I can only really talk about one character in depth. Okay, strap in, because I got a lot to say. I am a big fan of female protagonists, and Bayo is in the Hall of Fame. I implied before that Bayonetta marketing is some of the only accurate marketing when it comes to sexualizing female characters in games. The thing is, Bayonetta isn't a sexualized female character.
You're wrong.
Well, not in the way you're thinking. There's a huge difference between overtly sexual and sexualized. Bayonetta, both game and character, are the former. And they absolutely had to nail it because the entire game is laden with sexual tones. The damn finishers are called climax attacks, for crying out loud. So you can't talk about the character or the game without talking about sex appeal. And in playing the game you realise that there's no discrepancy between the marketing and the reality. Bayonetta has sex appeal, and she's just fucking loving it. She's powerful, snarky, playful, and sadistic. There's a reason her name is the title of the game. This is her story and her world. The spotlight is on her, because who else would it be on?
I feel like a fucking celebrity in this town.
She's a force of nature, and the naughty attitude she walks around with is in perfect contrast to the marbled gold agents of authority she pokes fun at. And just as you peel away their gold plating to reveal something sinister underneath, the same is true for Bayonetta. As the story progresses, when you unravel the hair, there's more to her and her story. She knows regret, and pain, and loss.
When you love something, never lose it. Understand, little one? You must keep it safe, close to your heart.
And she's fucking funny too, and believe me, it's hard enough to pull off humour, let alone good humour. Nothing rings harder than a game trying to force humour on you. It's a fucking death knell, to be sure.
Enzo, the road. Pay attention.
But the dialogue is spot on, and Helena Taylor owns the role as Bayonetta. And she can go from verbally undressing Luca with one sentence to dismissively ridiculing him the next.
Do I look like I have any interest in children? Now making them? Well, that's another story. You two are more hassle than you're worth.
As to her physical design, I love that Bayonetta was designed by a woman, Marie Shimazaki. Now while the brief came from Hideki Kamiya, the game's director, There's no question in my mind that it's Shimazaki's design that helped shape the character and reinforce the genuine weight to her larger-than-life personality. She gave Bayonetta long legs in a direct attempt to overcome a stereotype of short and thin legs on female characters in gaming. Her beehive hairdo was her idea to take the witch's pointy hat and take it into an elegant, fashionable direction, maintaining the height and shape while updating it for a modern witch. To quote Shimazaki, "I think I was able to put my feelings into her design, and she ended up a strong female character." I'll put a link to her blog post in the description. It's a very short read for what was undoubtedly a lot of work that went into this character. If characters like James Bond are masculinity taken to extremes, then Bayonetta is femininity taken to extremes. Not as an object to sell the game, but as an icon to be remembered and to empower, empowering to people of all genders we could all stand to feel as comfortable in our own skin as Bayonetta does. Her liberated sexuality feels true, not forced and fake like other characters. Bayonetta was ahead of her time, unapologetic in everything she does, unabashedly flirty, wholly protective, reveling in the moment and totally in charge. Most important of all, you want her to succeed. You want to see her triumph like nothing can stand in her way. There isn't a boring cutscene in the whole damn game, and you can thank her and those that worked to create her for that. And Japan, of course. Of cutscenes, there are two types. The first is the fully animated motion cutscenes, the standard fare for games. The second type is some extremely stylized cinema reel freeze frame stuff. It's got this fantastic sepia effect with shots of the story overlaid as film reel while the dialogue plays. It's truly something I've not seen before and a joy to watch. The story's go is good, simple but solid. And I won't lie, the twists are predictable, but the reasons behind those plot points are actually cool. It's that old adage of it's not what you tell, but how you tell it. There's a B-movie quality to the story, and I like that. You're totally entertained and never bored. But we are done with story. The book doth close, and we move on to the sound and music. What I will say is the score is fantastic, and some parts of it are very memorable. Often the use of a choir is paired with the approach of combat with angels, and the more serious the encounter, the more serious the choir. But you hit that climax button and the daunting, imposing music fades away to the exciting, upbeat tunes of Bayonetta's signature theme, mirroring the defeat of the serious and grandiose with the ludicrous. The sound design is crisp, poignant, synced and wonderfully balanced. Every little noise from her gunshots, the punches, the ambient sounds of the world, the chimes when you walk on the light bridges, they all help to make the world seem that much more reactive. And you hear the impact Bayonetta has on it when she moves. The voice work is fantastic, and each actor takes on each character like they were made for it.
Jesus, you really get into this shit, don't you?
I think graphics are a really boring thing to judge a game on, so I'm doing visuals and spectacle, and that's how dazzling and interesting it is to me within the style of the game. For example, Deus Ex is dated now, but for me, even today the visuals are a 10. I love the era it came out in. The UT engine is used to its full potential and every part of that game works visually. Bayonetta gets a 10, just like JC Denton. For 2009, the visuals look good even today. The European city of Vigrid is beautifully rendered in all its theocratic glory. The world of Paradiso feels appropriately angelic with wonderful and impossible architecture, gardens and temples. The settings take you to a small European village, magma caves, inside a plane, outside a plane. The character models are fantastic, saying nothing of the design that went into each one of them. You can feel their characters oozing off them through their clothing, expressions and animations. Every enemy feels true to the angelic theme, and yet they're all vastly different. There's very little Super Trooper Alpha, but this time in blue camo going on. You never feel like an asset has been reused too much. Joke about butt shots, yada yada yada. The animations are as fluid as I've ever seen, and when paired with the settings, you're treated to some true spectacles throughout the game. What's more is that the amazing cinematic look of the fights isn't confined to the cutscenes. They often seamlessly blend into combat with all the same details and complexity. There are some cutscenes in which every new angle, a new thing is happening, all flawlessly animated. It's really a beautiful game, and you can tell so much craft went into it visually, thematically and mechanically. But, is the game perfect? Summary time. I'm wrapping up and starting with the negatives because I like to end on a positive note.
I've seen a pig eat a man.
I struggled with a lot of the button mashing segments, and there's rumours that the PC port made it incredibly difficult to max the button mashing. Sometimes the camera is more scandalous than even Bayonetta, can fly wherever it fucking wants, and can be a nightmare to wrestle under control, especially on vehicle segments. Now I'm going to spoil a bit here. There's a point near the end where you ride on top of a fucking missile. It should be so cool, but it isn't. It drags on too long, and I know the whole thing is a homage to Space Harrier, one of Hideki Kamiya's favourite games. But it feels so awkward. Fighting on top of the missile, okay, now we're talking. More of this. There are some save points which are just astronomically bad, and seeing as how the majority of them are just fine, it makes you wonder, what were they thinking? Who snorted a ruler of sugar before they added the military transport Valkyrie save points? The worst offender of all. Failing a QuickTime event should not count as a death. For example, there's this one QTE right at the end of chapter 2 that is so arbitrary it even has its own save point right before it happens. And hitting it too early means you fail, unlike every other QuickTime event in the game. It feels cheap after playing your heart out for a level, only to get fucked over by a single button press. Especially when the far superior megaton mashing mechanic exists. These are minor grievances though, and largely personal annoyances more than flaws with the game.
You win some, you lose some.
You always had problems with the lose some part of that.
And they won't stop me from trying to beat infinite climax difficulty, nor will they stop me coming back to the game in years to come. At no point does the game ever feel the need to be grounded, not with its story, not with its set pieces, not with its gameplay. It takes itself seriously within the context of the game, as in tongue-in-cheek is a term we use outside Bayonetta. Inside Bayonetta, tongue-in-cheek is the bare minimum. There are 3 credit sequences to this game, one of them that puts you into fights to keep fighting, while the credits are still rolling. You can pole dance enemies to death, there's an arcade game between chapters, there's a music video, a movie, you fight while seamlessly running from floors to walls. I totally forgot about witch walking while writing the whole combat thing, but to put it in now would ruin the pacing of that whole segment. Witch walking, yes, you can run up walls, ceilings when the moon is full, and sometimes you can fight on the ceiling too. It's awesome. There is so much to a game that branches from just punching and kicking. It has wholesome moments, raunchy moments, exciting moments, and sad moments. At one point, a doppelganger assumes Bayonetta's appearance, and Bayonetta has a pose-off with herself for no reason at all.
Oh.
It is without question a unique and unforgettable game. Would I recommend Bayonetta? If you're not sure, then you skipped here, or you haven't heard a fucking word I just said. Yes, absolutely, I'm kicking myself for not buying it when it was released on PC immediately. This has everything you could want in a game, and more. As a PC player, it's so heartwarming to see it ported from consoles at long last. Now we're seeing others port over like Horizon and other example. It's great, honestly. I'm glad that Sega, with help from Platinum Games it sounds like, realised that no matter how console bound you might want to be, however many console gamers you sway into buying a second console, there will always be that demographic that just doesn't want one. Not necessarily a PC elitist, but maybe someone who just doesn't want to spend out on a console. Hell, maybe can't afford a second game system. Or someone like me who doesn't hate consoles, on the contrary. The console market helps drive new games development. Without the console markets, all I'd have to play is probably Age of Empires 26. But I grew up using a PC. It's what I'm most fond of. And it's clear there's a good market for it because Monster Hunter World's PC port was so successful, Monster Hunter Rise is slated to come to PC as early as 2022. There are more examples, no doubt. Now I imagine even with possible profits, porting to PC costs a lot of time and money, and that is another factor to consider. But all the same, I hope more games come to consoles and PC equally. And after seeing Bayonetta get ported, I'm looking forward to playing Bayonetta 2 on PC, because Sony and Microsoft have really warmed up to the PC For fuck's sake.
What's wrong with you?